Welcome to the Accu-Trade VIN-dow podcast. This week, Bob talks with David Long and Chris Olsen, and they discuss data-driven decisions as opposed to just opinions.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Bob. You go by Bob or Robert?
Well, people that know me closely call me Robert. People that don't know me call me Bob. So wherever you're comfortable, fire away. As long as you don't call me stupid or something, we're in good shape, brother.
That'll be the last thing I call you. So I've got 4 generations of Roberts and Bobs, grandfathers, brothers. So that's a great name.
Yeah.
Here's what I have. Being this piece of the vertical that I'd like to say is my wheelhouse, and that's the private party acquisition, more specific than the auction acquisition. How does the VIN-dow create an opportunity for us to know exactly what the consumer's issues are with the car, other than the regular codes that it could pop?
So give me a little deeper understanding. You're actually face-to-face with a consumer, or you're doing this online?
It could be either way. So the way that I've set up 57 buy centers from here to Brazil, and the way that the sort of the process works is instant cash offer over the phone. By the way, it's always more than KBB ICO. And if that tool's not being used, its market indicates and it gives data. Customers invited in. If the vehicle's as described and needs nothing, the customer's in and out with a check in their hand in 60 minutes. Part of that 60 minutes is a 15 to 20-minute inspection by a certified mechanic, just to make sure there's no leaks and issues with the vehicle. If the car checks out, boom, they get the money that they're offered over the phone. If the car doesn't check out, they get an adjusted value. How does VIN-dow make that quicker for me and for the 57 buy centers I've set up?
Yeah, that's a good thing. So you probably are aware of the fact that I built the Kelly Instant Cash Offer and sold it to Cox, right?
I am. I love it. I am an early adopter and exploited it to my advantage early on.
Yep. So when I built that 15 or 18 years ago, whenever it was, it's basically remained identical to what it was when we passed the baton. And I think we would both agree that it's been very successful for the folks we sold it to and for dealers that actually use it, right? So knowing that, after we sold that company to Cox, we had a 2-year non-compete, and that's how we wound up in Canada, because Canada was not included in our non-compete. So we set off on a quest to actually do the rest of what just a simple instant cash offer doesn't do, and that's add market data. So we now start to understand how it fits in terms of your own personal let's call it rainbow of acquisition needs, because not everybody, matter of fact, very few people are the best end user of any particular VIN. Does that make sense to you? So in other words, random acquisition is only good if you are somebody like, let's say that's in our case, we'll sell 1,000 cars this week, and they range from $500,000 Rolls Royces to blown motor Caravans. In that case, you could say that you're the best end user, which you're going to reveal the best end user in an open marketplace for any vehicle. What we found over the decades of use cases, a Lexus dealer is very rarely the best end user of a Mercedes diesel or of a Ford F-250 pickup. Could be in a remote location, but not in Center City, Philadelphia, or in Manhattan, right? Now, in your case, if you have buying centers set up, are these new car franchise dealers, or are they independent dealers?
Both.
Okay. So your rainbow of users of the 57, can you give me a little background in terms of, do they touch these cars before they buy them, or it's all osmosis online, and then they come in and, they do a walk around, which obviously does not include an OBD connection. So you really can have a communication situation where the consumer, which frequently happens, turned off the ABS light 3 starts ago and 19 miles ago. You see what I'm saying?
So it's a 3-step. Oh yeah, it's a 3-step process. So the offer is generated, given over the phone.
Yep.
The customer comes in. It's plugged in by. Bear in mind, the person that plugs in the OB2 is a Starbucks barista 3 months ago, right? So it's not used
Low
car guy
common
with a
denominator.
pinky
Got
ring.
it. Yep.
Right. And then once that all checks out, we reconfirm the range. Then it goes into the shop, making sure that there's no major leaks or issues. Frame, the whole bit. Comes right out of the shop. If everything checks out, the customer gets a check. They're on their way.
Yep. So this is really good. So unfortunately, when we initially built that product, it's one price. Now, as you, I think, and anybody would actually agree, you might not necessarily be the best end user of that VIN. If we're selling a particular car to an aggregated group at an auction and there's 700 people online, the probability we find a better end user than you are for that car is algebraically 100% of the time. You follow me? It's never the case where you would turn out to be the best end user. That being the case, we actually offer two values. One is the regressive value. That's the value that a dealer would love to buy the car for and have all of the information that surrounds it, including the OBD information, along with, the normal things, equipment, previous accident history, current damage, etc. Right? That you can collect prior to plugging in an OBD. When they get to the dealership and it's plugged in, it's mapped directly to the variations of value based on the items that turn up from the OBD. Now, you don't have to be a scientist, to your point. We've dumbed this down to where a common denominator of two can use it. So therefore, they don't have to go find the boss to explain what a P0137 means. You follow that? It goes directly to the universal condition report that maps it to an ABS light, and therefore it's a $1,400 deduct. One other piece of this, there is utterly no reason on earth ever to put it on a lift to find a reason why you're not going to buy the car, because our values are guaranteed. If for some reason you do put it in the shop and you don't want it you found somebody passed gas in the back seat and you decided not to purchase it, we definitely will. So in other words, there's an insurance policy associated with it. It's not a pontificator that's passing the number out. It's what I call a de-esser, a do things on the other end of it. It's not a
do things, huh?
Yeah. In other words, it's not a BS, it's a DS. You follow me?
I do.
Where it's not just some opinion of a book or a non-skin in the game player. I don't know if that answered your question sufficiently.
Yeah, well,
but
it kind of does,
okay.
Bob.
Yeah.
I think I may have been. So I'm always the best end user for the product, no matter what. Right? I'm not much, but I'm all I ever think about, and I don't want anybody else to have the opportunity that I've harvested. So that's where the data comes in. So the close can happen based on data, not based on opinion. So what is it called again? The VIN-dow. If the VIN-dow is given to the customer prior to them coming in, is that how this whole thing works then?
You can do it like that, sure, absolutely. And the validation of what they said, the condition of the mechanical and electronic condition of the car is validated, which obviously it's not done by the dealer. It's done by a device that actually shows up on the appraisal, so that it's not the dealer's fault when the customer didn't tell the truth, right?
I'm with you. That's why
platform.
Yeah, the personal affirmations, the personal pronouns of me and mine and I never work in a private party purchase situation. So I love that third party validation, and I appreciate you answering my question. If anybody has anything for me, I'm happy to answer as well. But thanks for letting me in the room, Bob.
Yeah. So before you take off, sir, what is the name of your company?
I'm not taking off. I am the executive general manager of a dealer group in Santa Rosa, California.
Okay.
And I have David Long Consulting, and that's the business that opens buy centers.
Okay, I got you. Good, love it. And you're leveraging Kelly ICO. Is that what you're saying?
So Kelly ICO is a great starting point, but I also use a product called VAN, which is Vehicle Acquisition Network.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Bill and the group. Sure, absolutely. They use our tool as well. Yep.
Yeah, Bill and Tom.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer. So if you're using a KB ICO tool, the funnel gets filled. You work the funnel. You get distracted. You're not able to refill the funnel. That's when VAN comes in and continues that circle of interest with the consumer private party seller side.
Right.
Anyway.
Yep. Yeah, he's been a guest on our podcast. Yep, we're pretty familiar with you guys.
Great product, yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thanks, David and Robert, for that answer. I see that we have Chris up here. Chris, do you have a question for Bob this morning?
Yeah, I think I love Clubhouse, and Bob, you definitely have the voice for Clubhouse, right? I feel like you could spin yarns all day and keep the room packed, but I'm finding I'm a really visual and tactical learner, and so I'm trying to understand what you're describing. And so I've gone to the website, and so I think I'm content to sit back at this point, because I thought I had a question, and then David addressed it in his conversation there. So I think I'm happy to sit back and listen at this point.
Yeah, that's fine, Chris. So in other words, I think what you see on a website as opposed to a 3-minute demo is a little bit different, right? Because, unfortunately, a picture is worth 20,000 words. You follow me? And I think if you have a automotive IQ that is, average to above average, which I'm sure is way above average, you will add to the picture immediately, because the use cases and what I commonly use the expression, actually, to Logan's question, why are you still doing this? I think from selling a few million cars in my life, we have a relatively good idea of the pain points of dealers. Dealers don't develop software. Third parties do. In many cases, pontificators do. People that never were successful in the car business. Car dealers are like hunters. They're not, like people that try to create a bureaucratic society, right? They basically are going out, they killed something, and they're on to the next kill, right? So as car dealers, we typically are subjected to a product that is developed by others that we adapt to, because if anything, in a Darwinian sense, car dealers are at the top of the food chain. No matter what we're given, we figure out how to get around it and how to use it, right? It doesn't necessarily turn out to be the best possible products, right? And my feeling is, by taking common, when I say common, 100% of the time, issues that are, it doesn't matter if you're a Mercedes dealer or if you're a Kia dealer or if you're a sharecropper with a 15-car used car lot. There's certain items that are stones in the shoe of people with dealer's licenses, big or small, right, that are not addressed. And from my perspective, at the top of that list is the ability to communicate in a way where it's argumentative responses or make it very difficult. It's you owe more on your car, so your car is worth more. Well, that's a common circumstance. But if we actually present all of the facts around that, which the tool actually does instantly, you kind of start to, it's not built to be unfair to a consumer. It's built that a car dealer that is dealing at the number 2 common denominator in terms of training and knowledge, et cetera, they actually have all the facts to rely on to, I would say, disarm the bomb. In other words, when you pull a fuse out of a bomb, the bomb's no longer dangerous. And that bomb can be, from many different angles. It could be you owe too much, and that's very common, as we all know, right? How do you overcome that? And then how do you actually, design a deal that you can overcome that by plowing equity into something else, all the rest of everything else we know. But we have to start at a point where, we can agree on premises. And a car dealer that is saying, well, what's it take to make a deal? See, that does not necessarily overcome or create confidence in the person that you're communicating with as to why, your car is worth X, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to make you feel good about it, and then come to a conclusion means we're going to be the owner of your car, right?
Okay, Bob, I think we have some comments here from David and Chris.
Okay. Yep,
So I'll just say one last thing. No, that's good. So what I heard you say is it levels the playing field. It gives us common ground to have a logical, rational conversation with a consumer that makes them make their decision based on data, not opinion, not based on what they owe, not based on what they see them being sold for online, not based on what their opinion is, but facts that help us close the deal. And that's how the last big buy center that was buying 250 cars a month that made $4.4 million of additional company gross on cars they could have never found at auction and from people they would have never met otherwise was because of that one thing, Bob. And that was evening the playing field and letting people have a rational conversation that was predicated on facts, not opinion. So I love what you just said. I completely agree, and I'm in full alignment with that.
That's great. And that's what we built over the last 10 years in terms of software to enable all dealers to take advantage of it at any level that actually matches their personality type.
Okay, let's hear from Chris.
I love that. It's perfect. I've seen it work over and over and over again. Without that, the absence of that requires the dealer to say, what'll it take to make a car deal? And those days are gone. And I'm with you, Bob. So thank you.
Yeah, and
that.
More importantly, to that point, when it's not successful, all of us resort to, oh, he was a dumbass. He's a stupid guy. You see, that's not what happened. What happened is that's Trump communication with lack of facts that support it, right? So that's just talk louder and it'll become the fact. See, that's precisely the opposite of what our tool is built to do. Not get to the argumentum ad hominem. Let's stick it with the facts. If X and Y are true, then the conclusion is, and now we can agree to the conclusion.
Let the customer, let them argue with the facts, not with you. Yeah, you didn't create the facts. You're Bob Rather, right? You're not creating the news. You're reporting the news.
But only it's PBS News. It's not CNN or Fox News.
I only watch Fox, but we'll talk about that.
But it's not Fox or CNN. It happens to be BBC News. You follow me?
I know. I do.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling your leg.
Right. Yeah.
So Bob, if I'm filling this in properly, and I think maybe that's where I'm multitasking and there's some gaps in my understanding. So exactly what you're saying and what David's speaking to, like using that VIN-dow printout to show somebody the market data and the pricing where our car sits, that tool alone closed me more deals without ever having to fade $1 off our asking price on the car. We're basically using that same concept, but on the front end as it relates to their trade as opposed to the car we're selling.
Yeah, and actually in our tool, in the aggregation of all data, without going anywhere else and without doing hocus pocus of all the different things of the erector set, it happens instantaneously. It plays well with anything else you're comfortable with because it took a long time to get that tattoo in people's brains, right? And tattoos don't erase that easily, so that's not our modus operandi. It plays perfectly inside of that, right? What doesn't play perfectly inside of that is the irrationality of the current marketplace, for instance. If you can buy cars based on that methodology today, you don't need to be, you're actually the equivalent to Jesus, levitating and so forth, right? Because now this market's not going to last, the insane wholesale market's not going to last. But using that methodology, you're not going to have any inventory for sale because cars priced that way bring $4,000 and $5,000 more at the auction at the moment. It's an anomaly. There's no question about that. But when you're able to understand, see, our whole tool set's based on replacement value, not on anything else, right? We show market data, but if you can't replace a car, you're underpricing the car for no good reason whatsoever. In particular, if you've recently sold that car successfully, which our tool also shows that. Recommended buyers to any vehicle the second you VIN-dow it to understand who is the best end user. Not that you're going to sell it to the best end user, but to understand that who in your neighborhood has recently sold that car, the top 50 people, and you can set it local or put it out 100 or 200 miles. You get a much better picture in terms of this is another thing that actually turns out to be the case with our tool set. It's what I call, and I'm sorry for being crude about this, it's insurance balls. It's when someone offers way too much money for a vehicle, because in your own logic it doesn't make any sense, but you make a deal based on it. We have dealer groups that are doing this, and to the point of the $4 million over the course of a year, we have multiple stores that actually are showing, believe it or not, more than that, because we now are saying that car is worth 70G. They thought it was worth 63. They trade it for the 70G. No, they have an exit strategy at 70G and retail it the following day for 75.5. Where otherwise,
hey Bob, I got to ask you a question about that.
Off of that. Sure, yep.
So in VIN-dow, the strategy page makes recommendations based on what's turning in the market, what you personally sold. Where I see the flaw in that, and maybe Accu-Trade will true this up for me, is it could recommend that you sell or that you replace cars that you lost $3,000 on. Do you have any component inside of Accu-Trade that prevents you from going out and buying the same car that you sat on for 60 days and lost $3,000?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Of course. Now stop and think about this for 1 second. Let's say you wanted to commoditize an item like gold or silver or pork bellies or sugar or whatever. Could you locally commoditize sugar? You really couldn't, could you? There's a broader market that actually creates the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, right? Where it's, in that case, it's worldwide. In our case, it's only North America. Where a VIN is blind. It has no eyes, it has no nose, it has no nothing. It just knows what it is. And when the DNA of that VIN, the dealer never asks questions of that VIN are revealed, we now understand specifically how that fits into the commodities market, not your local market, not somebody's broader market, not just a car in a particular metropolitan area. But if you wanted to replace that vehicle, you have to go in the open marketplace to acquire it. And if that's true, it's not your local market that dictates how much that vehicle is. Therefore, the fallacy of arrows on a listing site or what your local market has anything to do with based on that VIN becomes even further decrepit, oxidized, no longer relevant. Stop and think about this for a second. If I've sold this year to date, let's say 10,000 cars, how many cars do you think we sold in the same marketplace that we acquired them? It's almost nothing. It's under 10%. Because of simulcast and dealers' ability, even with VAN, to go outside of their local market to acquire, opportunities arise, and you're not emasculated by narrowing it down to 5 miles away or 28 miles away, whatever the numbers that you use. It's a false, when you're talking about the commodity of a VIN and you put it on a marketplace, there has access to buy it. I mean,
so what really needs to happen, though,
I mean, as well, right?
And I'm going to shut up after I say this, but I just can't help myself.
Yeah.
When a product comes in and tries to have one of my rooftops convince my managers that they could find possibly a better value outside of our market and make their car deal, it makes me crazy because I don't give two craps what outside my market says a car's worth. All I care is that I have the tools to buy that car today at my store, turn it around in 3 days, and have it retail within 27. And that's all that matters. You know what I mean? So I don't want somebody to come in and say, hey, this car is going to be worth $3,000 more in Southern California than it is Northern California. Because what happens to the sales manager at that point? Their thinking is polluted and they get weak.
And
so I need them to know.
That's exactly the reason why we give you the ability to default that information from the person you're talking to. In other words, if it's your manager or your salespeople. In other words, all you got to do is default it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist or it's not real. It just means we need to hide that from the player. That's easy.
Good, because the only thing that matters to me is what's real in my world, not what is real in the world, right?
And then default it exactly that way. In other words, hide the rest of the world and only use it in that particular case in Northern California for your stores that you're talking about. And that conversation still rings true with the consumer. They still have a dent. They still have a catalytic converter module that's bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't emasculate the broader knowledge of what that VIN's worth in a commodities market. It just means that you it took the 3 seconds it took to default the information you don't want them to have access to. That's it. Nothing more.
I love that. That's fantastic. All right, I'm going to stand down now, but I'm going to call you Robert now that I've had a little dialogue with you. I appreciate all that great information.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every week for a new episode where we chat with Bob Hollenshead, founder of Accu-Trade and the largest independent vehicle wholesaler in North America.